The moment Naomi walked through the front door, she knew. 3 suitcases sat lined up in the hallway like soldiers waiting for deployment. Brandon stood by the window in their living room, hands in his pockets, looking out at the street below. He didn't turn around when she entered. "We need to talk," he said, his voice flat and emotionless. Naomi set her purse down on the console table. Her heart was beating fast, but her hands stayed steady. She'd known this day would come. For 2 years she'd been watching, waiting, preparing. The late nights he claimed were work meetings. The receipts that didn't match his stories. The new cologne. The way he flinched when she touched him. "I'm leaving," Brandon said, finally turning to face her. "I'm going back to Simone." The name hung in the air between them. Simone. His college girlfriend. The one he'd dated for 4 years before they met. The one whose pictures he'd kept hidden in an old box in the garage. The one whose social media he still checked when he thought Naomi wasn't looking. "I see," Naomi said. Her voice was calm, almost detached. Brandon seemed disappointed by her lack of reaction. He'd probably expected tears, begging, maybe even anger. Instead, she stood there in her green blouse and black slacks, looking at him like he was a stranger. "That's it?" he asked. "That's all you have to say? What would you like me to say?" He ran his hand through his hair, frustrated. "I never really loved you, Naomi. I thought I could. I tried. But Simone, she's the one. She always was. 10 years. They'd been married for 10 years. Naomi thought about their wedding day, how handsome he'd looked in his tuxedo. She thought about the house they'd bought together, the dinners she'd cooked, the way she'd supported him through his career struggles. She thought about the woman she'd been when they met, bright and full of dreams, and the woman she'd become, quieter, smaller, always trying to be enough. "I've already moved most of my things out," Brandon continued. "These are the last of them. Simone and I are getting a place together. A fresh start." "How long?" Naomi asked. "What? How long have you been seeing her?" Brandon looked away. 3 years. 3 years. Naomi nodded slowly. She'd suspected for 2, had proof for 1.5. But 3 years meant it had started earlier than she'd known. It meant he'd been lying even longer than she'd documented. "The house is in both our names," he said, pulling out a folder from his briefcase. "I had my lawyer draw up papers. We'll split everything 50-50. Fair and simple. You can keep the house if you buy out my half." He placed the folder on the coffee table. Naomi glanced at it but didn't move to pick it up. "I'll have my lawyer look at it," she said. "Good. That's good." Brandon picked up 2 of the suitcases. "I'll come back for the last one tomorrow." "No need," Naomi said. "Take it all now." Something in her tone made him pause. He studied her face, trying to read what was happening behind her dark brown eyes. But Naomi had learned to hide her thoughts well over the past 2 years. She'd learned a lot of things. "You're taking this really well," he said suspiciously. "What did you expect, Brandon? Did you want me to fall apart? To beg you to stay? I guess I thought you'd at least react." "I'm reacting. I'm letting you go." She walked to the hall closet and pulled out the 3rd suitcase, wheeling it over to him. "Here. Take everything. Go be with Simone. I hope you'll both be very happy." The words weren't sarcastic. They were simply empty, devoid of any emotion at all. That seemed to unsettle Brandon more than anything else could have. He loaded up his car in 2 trips. Naomi watched from the window, the same window he'd been standing at when she came home. When he drove away, she didn't cry. She didn't collapse. She walked to her home office, the one Brandon had always considered her little hobby room, and opened her laptop. The spreadsheet was already there waiting. 2 years of careful documentation. Dates, times, locations, amounts. Screenshots of text messages retrieved from phone bills. Credit card statements showing purchases at jewelry stores, restaurants, hotels. Property records showing a condo purchased in Simone's name. Bank statements showing regular transfers to an account Brandon thought was hidden. Her best friend Yvonne had helped her gather evidence, playing detective on the weekends. Yvonne was a paralegal with connections and an understanding of what would hold up in court. Together they'd built a case that was airtight. Naomi's phone buzzed. A text from Yvonne. "Did it happen?" "Yes," Naomi typed back. "He's gone. Are you okay?" "I'm perfect. Tomorrow we move forward." Naomi closed her laptop and walked through the house. Every room held memories, but they felt distant now, like they belonged to someone else's life. The kitchen where she'd cooked countless meals. The bedroom where she'd slept alone so many nights while he worked late. The living room where they'd hosted dinner parties, playing the perfect couple. She wouldn't miss any of it, because none of it had been real. In the bedroom, she opened her closet and pulled out the red dress she'd bought 6 months ago. She'd never worn it. Brandon had said it was too bright, too attention-seeking. She laid it on the bed, along with the blue blazer and maroon skirt suit she'd also bought but never worn. Tomorrow she'd start wearing colors again. Her phone rang. Gerald, Brandon's lawyer. Mrs. Fletcher? His voice was hesitant. Yes. I just wanted to confirm that Mr. Fletcher delivered the preliminary documents to you this evening. He did. Good. And you'll be retaining counsel? I already have counsel, Mr. Gerald. I've had counsel for quite some time. There was a pause. I see. May I ask who's representing you? Diane Morrison. Another pause, longer this time. Diane Morrison was known in their city as the lawyer you hired when you wanted to win. She was expensive, ruthless, and had never lost a divorce case. Mrs. Fletcher, perhaps we could arrange a mediation. Keep things amicable. I think we're past that, don't you? My husband just told me he never loved me and has been having an affair for 3 years. Amicable isn't really on the table. Of course I understand. I just thought. Good night, Mr. Gerald. I'm sure we'll be in touch soon. Naomi ended the call and smiled for the first time that evening. She pulled out her suitcase, the one she'd packed 3 days ago when Brandon had told Simone over the phone that he'd finally work up the courage to leave. She'd heard the whole conversation through the voice-activated recorder she'd placed in his car. Inside the suitcase were her important documents, jewelry, and the external hard drive containing copies of everything. Tomorrow morning, she'd drive to Yvonne's house and stay there while the legal process began. She'd already arranged it all. As Naomi zipped up her suitcase, she caught sight of herself in the mirror. She looked the same as always. Professional, put together, calm. But inside, something had shifted. The woman who had walked through that door 2 hours ago would have begged him to stay, would have blamed herself, would have tried to fix what was broken. This woman, the one looking back at her now, knew better. This woman had learned that love should never make you smaller. That trust, once broken, couldn't be wished back together. That sometimes the best revenge wasn't screaming or crying or making a scene. Sometimes the best revenge was preparation. Naomi picked up her phone and made one final call. Diane? It's time. File everything tomorrow morning. Are you sure? Her lawyer asked. Once we start this, there's no going back. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. As she hung up, Naomi felt something she hadn't felt in years. Not happiness, not yet. But something close to it. Something that felt like freedom. Naomi didn't sleep that night. She didn't need to. Her mind was clear, her purpose absolute. She sat at her desk, going through every document one final time, checking for gaps, making sure everything was in order. The house felt different without Brandon in it. Lighter somehow. The air moved more freely. She'd always thought that was just a saying people used, that a space could feel different when someone left. But it was true. The house seemed to breathe easier. At midnight, Yvonne showed up with coffee and Chinese food. I knew you wouldn't eat, she said, letting herself in with the spare key Naomi had given her years ago. They sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Naomi and Brandon had eaten breakfast together that morning. He'd kissed her cheek before leaving for work, a perfunctory gesture he'd been performing for years. She'd known then that it would be the last time. How are you really doing? Yvonne asked, studying her friend's face. Naomi considered the question. I feel like I've been holding my breath for 2 years and I can finally exhale. No regrets. About what? The marriage? I gave it everything I had. I was a good wife. I supported him, believed in him, put his dreams before mine. And he threw it all away for someone he couldn't let go of. Naomi took a sip of coffee. No, I don't have regrets. I have clarity. Yvonne pulled out a manila envelope from her bag. The last piece. I picked it up this afternoon. Inside were photographs. Brandon and Simone at a restaurant last week. Brandon and Simone entering a hotel 3 months ago. Brandon and Simone shopping for furniture 2 weeks ago. Every image was time-stamped and location verified. Perfect, Naomi said, adding them to her file. He has no idea what's coming, does he? None. They worked together through the night, organizing documents into categories: financial assets, property, evidence of infidelity, misuse of marital funds. Each section was meticulously labeled and cross-referenced. At 3 a.m., Yvonne leaned back in her chair. You know, most people would have fallen apart by now. I fell apart 2 years ago, Naomi said quietly. When I first found out, I cried for 3 days straight. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I wanted to die. I remember. I stayed with you that whole weekend. And then Monday came and I had to decide. Did I want to be a victim? Did I want to beg him to stay to choose me? Or did I want to be smart? Naomi looked at her friend. I chose smart. You chose strength. Same thing. At dawn they loaded everything into Naomi's car. Her clothes, her personal items, her documents, her art supplies. Everything that mattered. Everything that was truly hers. The movers are coming tomorrow for the rest, Naomi said as they walked through the empty rooms one last time. All my grandmother's furniture, my books, everything I brought into this marriage, it's all documented. He can't claim any of it. What about the joint stuff? Already photographed and appraised. Diane has the list. They drove to Yvonne's apartment as the sun rose over the city. Naomi watched the streets pass by, familiar and strange at the same time. She'd driven these roads for 10 years, going to and from the house she'd shared with Brandon. After today she'd never have to drive them again. At 9 a.m. sharp Diane called. Everything's filed. The court has the documents. I've requested an emergency hearing for the asset freeze based on evidence of fund transfers and hidden accounts. How long? Judge Patterson is on the case. She's fast and fair. I'd say we'll have a preliminary hearing by the end of the week. And Brandon? He'll be served within the hour. Naomi felt her heart rate increase slightly. This was it. The moment everything became real. There's something else, Diane continued. I had my investigator do a final sweep. Simone has debts. Significant ones. Credit cards, personal loans. I think that's part of why she's been with Brandon. He's been paying them off. Using our money. Exactly. Which means we can argue for full restitution plus damages. After the call ended, Naomi sat on Yvonne's couch, staring at nothing. Yvonne sat beside her, not speaking, just being present. What if I'm wrong? Naomi finally said. What if I'm being vindictive? Are you taking anything that isn't rightfully yours? No. Are you lying about anything? No. Then you're not being vindictive. You're being just. Yvonne squeezed her hand. He made choices. Now he gets to live with the consequences. Naomi's phone buzzed. A text from a number she didn't recognize. What have you done? Brandon. He must have been served. She deleted the message without responding. Another text. Naomi, please. We need to talk about this. Delete. You can't do this. This isn't fair. Delete. I'll fight this. You won't win. Delete. The text kept coming, but Naomi turned off her phone. She'd said everything she needed to say by filing those papers. Words were done now. Actions were what mattered. Yvonne made breakfast while Naomi showered. When she emerged, wearing her red dress for the first time, Yvonne smiled. Now that's the Naomi I remember. The one from before. I'm not her either, Naomi said. I'm someone new. Someone better. They spent the day organizing Naomi's things in the spare bedroom, making it feel like home. Yvonne had cleared out space in the closet and bathroom. She'd bought fresh flowers and put them on the nightstand. You didn't have to do all this, Naomi said. Yes, I did. You're my sister. Not by blood but by choice. And you'd do the same for me. That evening Diane called again. Gerald called me. 3 times. He sounds panicked. What did he say? He wants to negotiate. Says his client is willing to be reasonable if we drop the emergency motions. And what did you tell him? I told him we'll see him in court. Naomi smiled. Perfect. There's more. Brandon tried to access one of the joint accounts this afternoon. It was frozen 2 hours before he got there. He also tried to get into the safe deposit box. Same thing. Everything's locked down tight. He's starting to understand. Oh, he's just beginning to understand. Wait until the hearings start. Wait until his business partners find out. Wait until his family learns what he's done. After dinner, Naomi sat by the window in her new temporary home, watching the city lights flicker on one by one. Somewhere out there, Brandon was probably with Simone, trying to explain why the life he'd promised her was crumbling before it even began. Part of her, a small part she didn't like to acknowledge, felt sorry for him. They'd had good times once, hadn't they? Early in their relationship, before things got complicated. Before she realized he was still in love with someone else. But sympathy didn't mean she'd stop. It didn't mean she'd give in or give up. Just meant she was human. Her phone rang. Patricia, Brandon's mother. Naomi hesitated, then answered. Hello. Naomi, honey. I just heard. I'm so sorry. You don't need to apologize for him. I raised him better than this. I don't know what happened. What he's thinking. Patricia's voice cracked. I always loved you. You know that, right? You've been nothing but good to my son and he's thrown it all away. Tears stung Naomi's eyes, the first she'd felt since this began. Thank you for saying that. Whatever you need, I'm here. And I mean that. If you need me to testify to speak on your behalf, I will. I might take you up on that. Please do. He needs to face what he's done. And that girl, Simone, she's not good for him. Never was. I tried to tell him years ago, but he wouldn't listen. After they hung up, Naomi let herself cry. Not for Brandon, not for the marriage, but for the version of herself that had tried so hard to make it work. For the woman who'd believed that love could conquer anything, that effort and devotion were enough. That woman deserved to grieve. And then she deserved to move on. Brandon woke up on Simone's couch, his neck stiff and his head pounding. They'd fought last night. A real fight with screaming and accusations. She'd been furious when he told her about the papers Naomi had filed. I thought you said she'd be easy, Simone had yelled. You said she'd just sign whatever you gave her. I thought she would. She's always been compliant. Well, she's not compliant now. Do you know what this means for us? That was when Brandon had realized something unsettling. Simone wasn't upset that his marriage was ending badly. She was upset that it might affect her financially. His phone had 17 missed calls. 5 from Gerald, 4 from his business partner Trevor, 3 from his mother, and 5 from numbers he didn't recognize. Probably reporters. News traveled fast in their social circle. He called Gerald first. Finally, his lawyer answered. We need to talk. Now. I'm at Simone's. I can be at your office in an hour. No. This is too sensitive. I'm coming to you. Give me the address. Gerald arrived 30 minutes later looking like he hadn't slept. His usually immaculate suit was wrinkled, his tie loose. He sat at Simone's small kitchen table and opened his briefcase. This is bad, Brandon. Worse than bad. This is a disaster. Just tell me. Your wife, ex-wife, whatever she is now, she's been documenting everything. And I mean everything. Gerald spread papers across the table. She has bank records showing transfers you made to Simone's accounts. Credit card statements for hotels, jewelry, trips. Property records showing you used marital funds to purchase a condo in Simone's name. Brandon felt the blood drain from his face. How did she? That's not even the worst part. She has recordings. Phone conversations. Text messages. Screenshots from your computer. She's been tracking you for at least 2 years, maybe longer? That's illegal. She can't use that. Actually, she can. You live in a one-party consent state. If she was party to any of these conversations, they're admissible. And even if some aren't, there's enough other evidence to bury you. Simone had been listening from the doorway. She walked in now, her face pale. What does this mean? Gerald looked at her. It means the condo you're living in? The one in your name? That's marital property. Bought with marital funds. It's going to be seized or you'll have to pay fair market value for it. That's not fair. Brandon gave it to me. He gave it to you using money that wasn't entirely his to give. That's called dissipation of marital assets. And it's going to cost him. Both of you actually. Brandon slumped in his chair. How much are we talking about? If she gets everything she's asking for? The house, her share of your business, restitution for the funds you transferred, damages? You could be looking at losing 70 to 80% of your total assets. 70? That's impossible. I'll fight this. She can't take everything. She's not taking everything. She's taking what's legally hers, plus damages for your misconduct. Gerald closed his briefcase. I've been doing this for 20 years, Brandon. I've never seen a case this well documented. She has you dead to rights. After Gerald left, Brandon sat in silence. Simone was crying in the bedroom. His phone kept buzzing with calls and texts he didn't want to answer. How had this happened? How had quiet, submissive Naomi turned into this? He remembered their conversation last night. The way she just nodded when he told her he was leaving. The way she'd handed him his suitcase. The complete lack of emotion on her face. She'd known. She'd probably known for a long time. And instead of confronting him, instead of fighting to save the marriage, she'd prepared to destroy him. His phone rang. Trevor. Where are you? His business partner demanded. We need to talk. Not now, Trevor. Yes, now. I just got a call from someone claiming to represent your wife. They're asking questions about the business. About your ownership stake. About investments made using company funds. Brandon's stomach dropped. What did you tell them? I told them to go through proper legal channels. But Brandon, what the hell is going on? Is it true you've been using marital assets for personal expenses? It's complicated. Complicated? The company could be implicated in your divorce. Our investors are going to hear about this. Our clients. Do you understand what you've done? I'll fix it. How? By making it all go away? By convincing your wife to drop everything. Trevor's voice was cold. I always liked Naomi. She was kind, smart, always supportive of the business. And you cheated on her. For years. With the same woman you dated before. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. And here's what's going to happen. You're taking a leave of absence from the company. Effective immediately. Until this is resolved, you're not making any decisions that could affect our business. You can't do that. Actually, I can. Check the partnership agreement. Clause 17. Any partner involved in legal proceedings that could impact the company can be temporarily suspended by majority vote. And guess what? The vote was unanimous. The call ended. Brandon stared at his phone, feeling the walls closing in. Simone emerged from the bedroom, her eyes red. I heard. You're losing the business too? I'm not losing anything. This is just temporary. Is it? Because it sounds like everything's falling apart. She sat across from him. Brandon, I need to know. How bad is this really? I don't know yet. Because I can't. I have my own debts. I needed this to work out. You promised me we'd have a good life together. There it was. The truth he'd been avoiding. Simone didn't love him. She loved what he could provide. And now that he couldn't provide it, what was left? Maybe we should take a break, she said softly. Just until this all settles down. A break? I just left my wife for you. I know and I appreciate that. But this is all too much too fast. I need time to think. Brandon laughed, a bitter sound. Unbelievable. You're leaving me too. I'm not leaving. I'm just saying we should slow down. Right. Slow down. While I lose everything. He stood up. You know what? Forget it. I should have seen this coming. He grabbed his jacket and walked out. Behind him, Simone called his name, but he didn't stop. He got in his car and drove, no destination in mind. His phone rang again. His mother. Mom, I can't talk right now. Yes, you can. Pull over. Something in her tone made him obey. He pulled into a parking lot and answered. What? I just spoke with Naomi. She told me everything. How long this has been going on, what you've done, how you've treated her. Mom, it's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. You lied to her. You used her. You threw away a good woman for someone who never deserved you in the first place. Simone and I. Simone is using you, Brandon. She always was. And if you can't see that, you're more foolish than I thought. Patricia's voice softened. I love you. You're my son. But I love Naomi too. And I will not stand by while you destroy her. What are you saying? I'm saying that if she needs me to testify on her behalf, I will. Your sister feels the same way. You'd testify against me? Your own son? I testify for the truth. There's a difference. Patricia paused. You still have time to make this right. To settle fairly, to admit what you've done, to show some character. But if you fight her, if you try to take from her what she's earned and deserves, I will not support you. The call ended, leaving Brandon alone in his car, watching strangers walk by, living their normal lives while his fell apart. He tried to call Naomi. Straight to voicemail. He tried texting. No response. Finally, he drove to their house. His car. The one they'd bought together. The one filled with memories of dinner parties and Christmas mornings and quiet Sunday afternoons. He used his key, but the lock had been changed. A note was taped to the door. All communication should go through my attorney, Diane Morrison. Brandon crumpled the note in his fist. This couldn't be happening. Not like this. Not so fast. But it was happening. And somewhere in the city, Naomi was moving forward with her life, leaving him behind in the rubble of everything he'd destroyed. The preliminary hearing was set for Friday morning. Naomi arrived at the courthouse in her blue blazer and matching skirt, her hair pulled back in a sleek bun. She looked professional, composed, unshakable. Diane met her at the entrance. Ready? I've been ready for 2 years. Inside, the courtroom was smaller than Naomi expected. Judge Patterson sat at the bench, a stern woman in her 60s with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Brandon was already seated with Gerald, looking haggard and defeated. He tried to catch Naomi's eye, but she looked straight ahead. This is a preliminary hearing to address the emergency motion for asset freeze, Judge Patterson began. Mrs. Fletcher, your attorney has submitted extensive documentation. I've reviewed it. Quite thoroughly, I might add. Yes, Your Honor, Diane said, standing. We're requesting that all marital assets remain frozen until a fair division can be determined. We have evidence that Mr. Fletcher has been systematically transferring funds and making purchases that dissipate marital property. Mr. Gerald? Brandon's lawyer stood, less confident than usual. Your Honor, my client acknowledges that mistakes were made. However, we believe the scope of the freeze is too broad. Mr. Fletcher needs access to funds for living expenses, legal fees. Mr. Fletcher should have thought about that before he spent marital funds on a condominium for his girlfriend. Judge Patterson's voice was dry. Motion granted. The freeze stays in place. Gerald tried again. Your Honor, perhaps we could agree to a monthly allowance. Your client can get a job like everyone else. Next item. Diane presented the evidence, piece by piece. Bank statements showing regular transfers of $5,000 a month to Simone's account. Credit card bills for hotels in the same city where Brandon claimed to be on business trips alone. Property records for the condo, purchased with a down payment that came directly from their joint savings. Your Honor, Diane continued, Mrs. Fletcher was unaware of these transactions. She discovered them 2 years ago and rather than confront her husband, she consulted with legal and financial advisors to understand her rights and document the full extent of the deception. Very wise, Judge Patterson said, making notes. We're requesting full restitution for all marital funds used inappropriately, plus damages for emotional distress and breach of fiduciary duty. Gerald stood. Your Honor, emotional distress damages in a divorce case are appropriate when one party has engaged in egregious conduct, the judge interrupted. And this certainly qualifies. Continue, Ms. Morrison. Diane presented more evidence. Text messages between Brandon and Simone discussing how to hide their relationship. Emails about the condo purchase with Brandon writing, "Don't worry, she'll never know." Calendar entries showing planned trips that Brandon had told Naomi were solo business meetings. The most damaging evidence came next. A recording of a phone conversation between Brandon and Simone, made 4 months ago. I just need to keep her happy a little longer, Brandon's voice said through the courtroom speakers. Once I secure the promotion and the stock options vest, I'll leave. But if I divorce her now, she gets half of everything and I can't afford that yet. Naomi listened to her husband's voice plotting against her and felt nothing. She'd heard this recording dozens of times while preparing for this moment. The shock had worn off long ago. Brandon's face had gone pale. He leaned over to whisper to Gerald, who shook his head helplessly. Mrs. Fletcher, Judge Patterson said, looking at Naomi directly. How long were you married before you discovered the affair? 8 years, Your Honor. And you've been documenting for 2 years since? Yes, Your Honor. That's remarkable restraint. Most people would have confronted their spouse immediately. I wanted to be sure I understood the full situation before taking action. The judge nodded approvingly. A wise approach. Mr. Fletcher, do you have anything to say? Brandon stood slowly. Your Honor, I made mistakes. I hurt my wife. I take full responsibility for that. But I don't believe I should lose everything because of it. You're not losing everything, Mr. Fletcher. You're losing what you tried to steal, plus facing consequences for your deception. There's a difference. Judge Patterson looked at her notes. I'm ordering a full forensic accounting of all marital assets. I'm appointing a special master to oversee the process. And I'm scheduling the next hearing for 3 weeks from today. Your Honor, Gerald interjected, 3 weeks doesn't give us much time to. Then I suggest you work quickly. This case is straightforward. Your client engaged in marital misconduct and financial deception. The only question is the extent of damages. She banged her gavel. We're adjourned. Outside the courtroom, reporters waited. Word had spread about the case. A successful businessman caught in an elaborate affair, his wife fighting back with years of evidence. It made for good headlines. Diane handled the press while Naomi slipped out a side entrance with Yvonne. That went well, Yvonne said as they walked to the parking garage. It's just the beginning. How do you feel? Naomi considered the question. Vindicated. Is that wrong? Not even a little bit. They drove back to Yvonne's apartment, where Naomi had been staying. Over the past week it had started to feel like home. She'd set up a small workspace in the corner of the guest room, hung up her clothes, arranged her books on the shelf. That afternoon Trevor called. Brandon's business partner. Naomi? I hope it's okay that I'm reaching out. Of course. What can I do for you? I wanted to talk to you about the business. About your investment. My investment? Your grandmother's trust fund. When you and Brandon got married, You invested a significant portion of it in the company. I'm looking at the records now. $200,000 over the course of your marriage. Naomi had forgotten about that. Brandon had asked her to invest, said it would help the company grow, that they'd both benefit. She'd agreed because she trusted him. I want you to know, Trevor continued, that investment has grown substantially. The company's worth 10 times what it was when you first invested. Which means your stake is worth approximately $2 million. Naomi sat down. $2 million? Yes. And as a major investor you have certain rights. Including voting rights on major decisions. He paused. Like whether Brandon remains a partner. I don't want to interfere with the business. You're not interfering. You're protecting your investment. Brandon's actions have put the company at risk. His judgment is compromised. Several of our clients have expressed concerns about continuing to work with us if he remains involved. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we buy out his partnership. He'd still receive fair value for his stake, but he'd no longer have decision-making power or day-to-day involvement. And your investment would be protected. Naomi thought about this. Brandon had built that company from nothing. It was his dream, his passion. Taking it from him would hurt more than taking the house, more than taking the money. But he'd taken her trust, her love, her 10 years. He'd taken her dreams of a family, of growing old together. He'd taken everything that mattered and thrown it away. Do what you think is best for the company, she said finally. After the call, Naomi sat in silence. Yvonne found her there an hour later, staring out the window. What happened? Naomi explained about the investment, about Trevor's call, about the buyout. He's going to lose the company, she said quietly. Everything he worked for. He did this to himself, Naomi. I know. But it still feels heavy. Yvonne sat beside her. You know what I think? I think you're one of the strongest people I've ever met. You didn't lash out, didn't seek revenge for revenge's sake. You just stood up for yourself and demanded what was fair. There's nothing wrong with that. Then why do I feel guilty? Because you're a good person. Because even after everything he did, you still care about his pain. That's not weakness. That's humanity. Yvonne squeezed her hand. But don't let that humanity make you doubt yourself. You're doing the right thing. That night, Naomi received an email from Diane. The forensic accountant had completed the preliminary review. The total amount of marital funds Brandon had transferred or spent on Simone was close to $400,000. $400,000. Over 3 years. Money that should have gone to their savings, their retirement, their future. Instead, it went to maintaining his affair. The email continued, given the evidence and the judge's favorable response, I recommend we push for a settlement. Full custody of the house, 70% of remaining assets, full restitution of the $400,000, plus an additional $50,000 in damages. I believe we can get it. Naomi wrote back, proceed. She closed her laptop and looked around the small guest room that had become her sanctuary. In 3 weeks this would all be over. She'd have the house back empty of Brandon's presence. She'd have financial security. She'd have justice. But what she wanted most, she realized, was peace. The kind of peace that came from knowing she'd fought for herself, that she hadn't let him break her, that she'd emerged from this nightmare stronger than before. That night, she slept soundly for the first time in 2 years. The forensic accountant's full report arrived via courier on Monday morning. It was 300 pages long, meticulously detailed, and damning. Diane called as soon as Naomi finished reading it. This is even worse than we thought, her lawyer said. He's been siphoning money for almost 4 years, not 3. And there are more accounts we didn't know about. How much total? Close to $600,000. Maybe more once we trace everything. Naomi felt dizzy. $600,000. Over almost half their marriage. Money she'd earned through her own work, her inheritance, their joint investments. Gone, transferred bit by bit to support another woman. There's something else, Diane continued. The condo isn't the only property. There's also a car, registered in Simone's name but with loan payments coming from your joint account. And jewelry. Lots of jewelry. Can we get it back? Most of it, yes. The condo will either be sold or Simone will have to pay fair market value to keep it. The car can be repossessed. The jewelry, that's trickier, but we'll try. That afternoon, Brandon finally got through to her. He'd been trying for days, but Naomi had blocked his number. This time, he called from a number she didn't recognize. Naomi, please. Just talk to me. She should have hung up. She'd promised herself she wouldn't engage with him outside of legal proceedings. But something in his voice, a desperation she'd never heard before, made her pause. What do you want, Brandon? I want to fix this. I want to make things right. It's too late for that. It's never too late. We can work this out. Go to counseling. Start over. Naomi almost laughed. Start over? You told me you never loved me. You've been lying to me for years. You spent over $500,000 of our money on another woman. And now you want to start over? I was confused. I made mistakes. But we can get past this. No, Brandon. We can't. I don't want to get past this. I want to get past you. You're doing this to punish me. I'm doing this to protect myself. There's a difference. The business, Naomi. They're trying to force me out of my own company. You could stop that. You have the power to stop it. So that was what this was really about. Not their marriage. Not love. The business. I'm not stopping anything. Trevor and the other partners are making business decisions. That's not my concern. You invested in that company. It's partially yours. You could vote to keep me on. Why would I do that? Because despite everything, we were partners once. We built a life together. That has to mean something. It did mean something. Until you destroyed it. Naomi's voice was steady, calm. Goodbye, Brandon. She hung up and immediately blocked the new number. Her hands were shaking, but not from sadness. From anger, pure and righteous. Yvonne came home to find Naomi pacing the apartment. He called, Naomi said. He wants me to save his position at the company. What did you tell him? I told him no. Good. Yvonne set down her purse. You know what we should do? We should go out. Get dressed up, go to that new restaurant downtown, remind you that there's life beyond all this legal drama. I don't know if I'm ready for that. You don't have to be ready. You just have to show up. They went to a upscale bistro, the kind of place Brandon used to take clients. Naomi wore her maroon dress, the one she'd bought but never worn because Brandon said it made her look too bold. She felt bold. She felt alive. Over dinner, Yvonne told her about her own week, about her cases at the law firm, about the guy who'd asked her out at the coffee shop. Normal life things. Things that had nothing to do with divorce or betrayal or revenge. Thank you, Naomi said as they finished dessert. For what? For reminding me that I'm more than this divorce. More than what he did to me. You've always been more than that. You just forgot for a while. On their way out, they ran into Trevor and his wife, Anna. Trevor's face lit up when he saw Naomi. Naomi. It's good to see you. He hugged her warmly. You look wonderful. Thank you. You remember Yvonne? Of course. Ladies, please join us for a drink. They moved to the bar area, settling into comfortable chairs. Anna, whom Naomi had always liked, reached over and squeezed her hand. I'm so sorry for what you're going through, Anna said. Brandon was a fool. Thank you. That means a lot. Trevor ordered a round of drinks. Naomi, I wanted to talk to you about the company. We had the vote today. Brandon's out. We're buying him out at fair market value, but he's no longer a partner. How did he take it? Not well. But it was necessary. His actions damaged our reputation. We've already lost 2 clients because of the publicity around your divorce. I'm sorry about that. Don't be. This isn't your fault. It's his. Trevor leaned forward. But here's what I wanted to tell you. We'd like to keep you on as an investor. In fact, we'd like to increase your stake if you're interested. I don't know anything about running a business. You don't have to. You'd be a silent partner just like before. But your investment has been incredibly valuable to us, and we'd like to continue that relationship. Naomi thought about this. It would tie her to Brandon's world in some way, but it would also give her financial security and independence. Can I think about it? Of course. Take all the time you need. Later, as Naomi and Yvonne walked to their car, Naomi felt something shift inside her. For so long, she'd defined herself in relation to Brandon. His wife. His support system. The woman trying to hold his interest. But she was more than that. She was a successful woman in her own right. An investor. A friend. A survivor. The next day, Brandon's mother Patricia called. Naomi, honey. How are you holding up? I'm okay, Patricia. Really? I wanted you to know that Nicole and I met with your lawyer yesterday. We gave statements about Brandon's behavior, about the marriage, about Simone. You didn't have to do that. Yes, we did. You were family to us for 10 years. You still are as far as I'm concerned. What Brandon did was wrong and we're not going to pretend otherwise. Naomi felt tears prick her eyes. Thank you. That means more than you know. He's my son and I love him. But love doesn't mean blind support. It means holding people accountable when they hurt others. Patricia paused. He came by yesterday. He's living in a small apartment now. Simone left him. She left. As soon as she realized the money was gone and the condo was going to be taken away, she found someone else. Some real estate developer with actual money. Naomi should have felt satisfaction at this news. Instead, she just felt sad. Sad that Brandon had thrown away everything for someone who'd never really loved him. Sad that he was alone now, facing the consequences of his choices. But she didn't feel guilty. There was a difference. How is he? She asked, because despite everything she was still human. Broken. Angry at himself, I think, more than anyone else. He's starting to understand what he lost. It's too late for understanding. I know. And I told him that. I told him he made his choices, and now he has to live with them. Patricia's voice softened. But you, Naomi, you're going to be fine. Better than fine. You're going to thrive. After the call, Naomi sat with those words. Thrive. When was the last time she'd thought about thriving instead of just surviving? She opened her laptop and started researching. Classes she could take. Trips she wanted to go on. Hobbies she'd abandoned during her marriage. The business investment Trevor had offered. For 10 years she'd put her life on hold, waiting for Brandon to love her the way she loved him. Waiting for him to choose her over his memories of Simone. Waiting for something that was never going to happen. She was done waiting. That night she called Diane. About the settlement. I want to add something. What? I want him to pay for me to go back to school. I gave up my master's degree when we got married because he needed support launching the business. I want that back. Consider it done. Naomi smiled. It was the first thing she'd asked for that was about her future, not just compensation for the past. And it felt right. The next hearing was in 2 weeks. Brandon would probably fight the settlement terms. His lawyer would argue they were too harsh, too punitive. But Naomi had the evidence, the judge's sympathy, and the truth on her side. She was going to win. Not because she wanted to destroy Brandon, but because she deserved justice. And after that? After the divorce was final and the assets were divided and the legal battles were over? She was going to build a life that was truly hers. One where she wasn't waiting for someone else's love or approval. One where she was enough, all on her own. That was the real victory. The second hearing was packed. News of the divorce had spread through their social circles, and everyone wanted to see how it would unfold. Naomi arrived early, wearing her red dress this time. If people were going to watch, she'd give them something to see. Brandon was already seated, looking thinner than before. He'd aged in the past few weeks, lines appearing around his eyes that hadn't been there before. Gerald sat beside him, shuffling papers with an air of resignation. Judge Patterson called the court to order. We're here for the evidentiary hearing in Fletcher versus Fletcher. Ms. Morrison, you may proceed. Diane stood, commanding the room. Your Honor, we're presenting evidence of systematic financial deception, marital misconduct, and breach of fiduciary duty spanning nearly 4 years of the Fletcher marriage. We have witnesses prepared to testify, including family members, business associates, and financial experts. The first witness was the forensic accountant, a meticulous man named Howard who spoke in precise, measured tones. He walked the court through every transaction, every transfer, every hidden account. The numbers were staggering. In total, Howard concluded, approximately $637,000 in marital assets were transferred or spent on items and expenses related to Mr. Fletcher's extramarital affair. Gerald cross-examined, but there was little he could challenge. The numbers were the numbers, documented and verified. Next came Trevor. He testified about the investment Naomi had made in the company, how it had grown, and how Brandon had misrepresented the business's finances to Naomi on multiple occasions. Did Mr. Fletcher ever tell his wife about business losses or setbacks? Diane asked. No. He wanted her to believe everything was going well. But there were quarters where we struggled, and Mrs. Fletcher's investment kept us afloat. She deserved to know that, but Brandon never told her. Why do you think he kept that information from her? I think he didn't want her to know how much he needed her. He wanted to appear successful and in control. Gerald objected, but the judge allowed the testimony to stand. Then came Patricia. Brandon's mother walked to the witness stand with her head high, not looking at her son. Mrs. Fletcher, you're the defendant's mother, correct? Yes. And you're here voluntarily to testify on behalf of your daughter-in-law? Yes. Because it's the right thing to do. Diane led her through questions about the marriage, about what she'd observed over the years, about conversations she'd had with both Brandon and Naomi. Did your son ever discuss his relationship with Simone with you? Yes. Several times. He said he couldn't get over her, that she was the love of his life. I told him that was disrespectful to his wife, that if he felt that way he should get a divorce before pursuing someone else. He said he would, but he never did. When did these conversations take place? Throughout the marriage. From the very beginning, really? A murmur went through the courtroom. Brandon's face was red, his jaw clenched. So your son admitted to you that he had feelings for another woman during his entire marriage to Naomi? Yes. And I told him repeatedly that what he was doing was wrong. That Naomi deserved better. Did you ever warn Naomi? Patricia looked pained. No. And I regret that every day. I thought it was Brandon's place to be honest with her. I didn't realize how deeply he was deceiving her. Nicole testified next, Brandon's younger sister. She spoke about family gatherings where Brandon would disappear to take phone calls, about the time she'd seen him with Simone when he'd told Naomi he was somewhere else. He'd lie right to her face, Nicole said, her voice thick with emotion. Naomi would call asking where he was and he'd tell me to cover for him. I did it at first because he's my brother. But then I saw how much it was hurting her and I stopped. When did you stop covering for him? About a year ago. I told him what he was doing was wrong, that Naomi was family too, and I wouldn't be part of his lies anymore. We didn't speak for months after that. The testimony painted a picture of systematic deception, not just of Naomi but of everyone who cared about their marriage. By lunch recess, the mood in the courtroom had shifted decisively against Brandon. During the break, Naomi sat in a small conference room with Diane and Yvonne, eating sandwiches and reviewing the afternoon's planned testimony. This is going well, Diane said. Better than well. The judge is clearly sympathetic. Will I have to testify? Probably. Gerald will want his chance to cross-examine you, to try to paint you as vindictive or opportunistic. But we've prepared for that. Just tell the truth. That's all you need to do. The afternoon session began with Simone herself. She'd been subpoenaed to testify about the financial support she'd received from Brandon. She walked to the stand looking nervous, dressed in a conservative navy suit that was probably meant to make her appear respectable. It didn't work. Ms. Harrison, Diane began, you were in a relationship with the defendant for approximately 3 years, correct? Yes. During that time, did Mr. Fletcher provide you with financial support? He helped me out sometimes. He helped you out. Can you be more specific? Simone shifted in her seat. He paid my rent sometimes. Bought me things. According to bank records, he transferred an average of $5,000 per month to your account for 3 years. That's $180,000. Is that accurate? I guess so. You guess so. Did you know Mr. Fletcher was married during this time? Yes. Did you know the money he was giving you came from marital assets? Money that belonged to both him and his wife. I didn't think about where it came from. He said it was his money. Did you love Mr. Fletcher? Simone hesitated. I cared about him. That's not what I asked. Did you love him? I don't know. When did your relationship with Mr. Fletcher end? A few weeks ago. Why did it end? Because things got complicated with his divorce. Because he no longer had money to give you, you mean? Gerald objected. Argumentative. Sustained, Judge Patterson said. Rephrase, Ms. Morrison. Let me ask this differently. After Mr. Fletcher left his wife and his assets were frozen, did you remain in a relationship with him? For a little while. How long? About a week. And then you left him for someone else, correct? I met someone who was a better fit. Someone with money who wasn't going through a divorce. Objection. Withdrawn. Diane turned away from the witness. No further questions. Gerald's cross-examination was brief. There wasn't much he could do to rehabilitate Simone's testimony. She'd admitted to taking money, to knowing Brandon was married, to leaving him as soon as the money dried up. After Simone stepped down, Brandon himself took the stand. He'd insisted on testifying despite Gerald's advice against it. Mr. Fletcher, Diane began, you told your wife that you never loved her. Is that true? I said that in anger. It wasn't true. So you did love her? I cared about her very much. But you also loved Simone. I had feelings for both of them. So you lied to one or both of them about your feelings. Brandon looked trapped. It was complicated. It seems simple to me. You married Naomi while still having feelings for someone else. You maintained a relationship with that someone else throughout your marriage. You spent over $500,000 of marital funds on that relationship. And when you finally decided to leave, you told your wife you never loved her. Does that accurately summarize the situation? You're making it sound worse than it was. Am I? Please tell the court. How should I characterize your behavior? I made mistakes. I hurt people. But I'm not a monster. No one called you a monster, Mr. Fletcher. We're simply establishing facts. Diane pulled out a document. This is a recording of a phone conversation between you and Ms. Harrison from 4 months ago. In it, you discussed timing your divorce to maximize your financial position. Do you recall this conversation? I don't remember specifically. Let me refresh your memory. She played a clip. Brandon's voice filled the courtroom. If I divorce her now, she gets half of everything. I need to wait until after the stock options vest. That was taken out of context, Brandon said quickly. What context makes that statement acceptable? He had no answer. Diane continued her examination, methodically demolishing every defense Brandon tried to offer. Yes, he'd hidden accounts. Yes, he'd lied about business trips. Yes, he'd purchased property in Simone's name using marital funds. Yes, he'd told Simone he was leaving Naomi months before he actually did. By the time Diane finished, Brandon looked defeated. Gerald's redirect examination tried to humanize him, to show remorse, but the damage was done. Finally, Naomi took the stand. She'd been dreading this moment, but as she walked to the witness box, she felt calm. This was her chance to tell her story. Mrs. Fletcher, Diane began gently, can you tell the court about your marriage? Naomi took a breath. I thought we were happy. I supported Brandon's dreams. I invested in his business. I took care of our home. I did everything I thought a good wife should do. When did you first suspect something was wrong? About 2 years ago. Small things at first. He was distant. He'd take calls in the other room. His schedule didn't always match what he told me. What did you do when you suspected infidelity? I wanted to be sure before I did anything. I didn't want to accuse him falsely. So I started paying attention. I noticed charges on our credit card for places he said he hadn't been. I found receipts. And then I hired someone to follow him. That must have been difficult. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. Because part of me hoped I was wrong. Part of me wanted him to be the man I thought he was. When did you know for certain? When I saw the photographs. Him and Simone together. Looking at each other the way he used to look at me. Naomi's voice cracked slightly, but she maintained her composure. That's when I knew my marriage was over. Why didn't you confront him then? Because I needed to protect myself. I'd seen what happened to friends who'd gone through divorces. The fighting, the lies, the financial devastation. I didn't want that. I wanted to be smart about it. So you documented everything? Yes. Every transaction, every lie, every moment of deception. I built a case because I knew if I didn't, he'd try to make me seem unreasonable or vindictive. I wanted the truth to speak for itself. Gerald's cross-examination was aggressive. He tried to paint Naomi as cold and calculating, as someone who'd married for money, as someone who was now trying to destroy Brandon out of spite. Isn't it true, Mrs. Fletcher, that you come from a wealthy family? My grandmother left me a trust fund, yes. And you invested that money in your husband's business? Yes. So you had a financial stake in his success? I had an emotional stake in his success. I loved him. I wanted him to achieve his dreams. But you also stood to benefit financially. We both stood to benefit. That's what marriage is supposed to be. Partnership. Yet now you're asking for 70% of the marital assets. Does that sound like partnership to you? I'm asking for what's fair. He spent over $600,000 of our money on another woman. I'm asking for that back, plus compensation for the lies and betrayal. That's not vindictive. That's just. Gerald tried several more approaches, but Naomi remained steady, her answers clear and consistent. She didn't get angry or defensive. She simply told the truth. When she stepped down, she felt lighter. Years of secrets and silence had been spoken aloud. The truth was out there now for everyone to see. Judge Patterson called for closing arguments. Diane spoke first, summarizing the evidence, the testimony, the clear pattern of deception and financial misconduct. Your Honor, she concluded, Mrs. Fletcher isn't asking for revenge. She's asking for justice. She's asking that the marital assets be divided fairly, accounting for the massive sums her husband spent on his affair. She's asking for the opportunity to rebuild her life after 10 years of deception. That's not too much to ask. Gerald's closing emphasized Brandon's remorse, his willingness to settle, his hope for a fair resolution. Judge Patterson listened to both sides, then looked at her notes for a long moment. I'll have my ruling in 1 week, she said finally. Court is adjourned. Outside, reporters swarmed them. Diane handled the questions while Naomi and Yvonne slipped away to their car. "You did great in there," Yvonne said as they drove away. "You were strong and honest and real. I just told the truth. That's all you ever needed to do." They drove back to the apartment in silence. Naomi stared out the window watching the city pass by. In 1 week this would all be over. The legal battle would end and her new life could begin. She wasn't afraid anymore. Whatever happened, she'd survive. More than survive. She'd thrive. Because she'd learned something important through all of this. She didn't need Brandon or anyone else to validate her worth. She was enough all on her own. And that was a truth no judge's ruling could change. The week waiting for Judge Patterson's ruling felt both endless and too short. Naomi spent the time preparing for whatever came next. She met with a real estate agent about selling the house if she decided not to keep it. She researched graduate programs in business administration. She had coffee with Trevor to discuss increasing her investment in the company. "You've changed," Trevor said during their meeting. "You seem stronger." "I'm stronger. I had to be." "The offer still stands. We'd love to have you more involved in the company. Not just as an investor but maybe in an advisory capacity. Your perspective would be valuable." Naomi considered this. A year ago the idea would have terrified her. She'd seen herself as Brandon's support system, not as someone with her own expertise to offer. But now, "I'd like that," she said. "After everything settles, let's talk seriously about what that would look like." On the morning of the ruling, Naomi dressed carefully. She chose her blue suit, professional and dignified. She'd been wearing bright colors throughout the proceedings, a small act of rebellion against the years she'd spent trying to be invisible, trying not to outshine Brandon. The courtroom was packed again. Brandon sat with Gerald, looking resigned. He didn't try to catch Naomi's eye this time. Patricia and Nicole sat in the gallery behind Naomi, showing their support. Judge Patterson entered and everyone stood. She settled at her bench and opened a folder. "I've reviewed all the evidence and testimony in this case," she began. "I've also reviewed the arguments from both counsel. This is one of the most clear-cut cases of marital misconduct I've seen in my 20 years on the bench." She looked at Brandon. "Mr. Fletcher, you systematically deceived your wife throughout the majority of your marriage. You spent over $600,000 in marital funds on an extramarital affair. You purchased property in another woman's name using money that belonged to both you and your wife. You lied to your spouse, your family, and your business partners. Your actions were not mistakes. They were choices." Brandon's face was pale, but he said nothing. Mrs. Fletcher, on the other hand, showed remarkable restraint and wisdom. Rather than confronting her husband in anger, she documented the deception. She protected herself legally and financially. She built an airtight case. I commend her for that approach. Judge Patterson looked at her notes. "Here is my ruling. The marital home goes to Mrs. Fletcher, free and clear. Mr. Fletcher will receive no compensation for his interest in the property." Gerald started to object, but the judge held up her hand. "Mr. Fletcher forfeited any claim to that property when he spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on his affair. Consider it the cost of his choices." She continued. "Mrs. Fletcher is awarded full restitution of the $637,000 in marital funds that Mr. Fletcher transferred or spent on Ms. Harrison. This amount will be paid from Mr. Fletcher's share of remaining marital assets. Additionally, Mrs. Fletcher is awarded $200,000 in damages for emotional distress and breach of fiduciary duty. Mrs. Fletcher's investment in Fletcher Technologies is recognized as separate property, having come from her personal inheritance. The current value of that investment, approximately $2 million, belongs solely to her. The remaining marital assets, after all transfers and awards, will be divided 60-40 in Mrs. Fletcher's favor. Finally, Mr. Fletcher will pay for Mrs. Fletcher to complete her master's degree, an educational goal she abandoned to support his career. Estimated cost, $100,000. Judge Patterson looked up from her notes. "Are there any questions about this ruling?" Gerald stood. "Your Honor, this is extremely one-sided. My client will be left with almost nothing. Your client should have thought of that before he spent over $500,000 on an affair. The ruling stands." She banged her gavel. "This case is closed. The marriage of Naomi and Brandon Fletcher is dissolved." The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Naomi sat still, processing what had just happened. She'd won. Completely. More than she'd even hoped for. Diane leaned over and squeezed her hand. "Congratulations. That's one of the best outcomes I've ever seen in a divorce case." Brandon stood and walked out quickly, Gerald following. He didn't look back. Patricia came forward and hugged Naomi tightly. You deserved every bit of that. Thank you for testifying. For supporting me. Your family, honey. That doesn't change just because my son was a fool. Nicole hugged her next. If you need anything at all, you call me. Outside, Diane handled the press while Naomi slipped away with Yvonne. In the car, they sat in silence for a moment. How do you feel? Yvonne finally asked. Relieved. Vindicated. Free. Naomi looked at her friend. And ready to move forward. They drove back to the apartment, but it didn't feel like going home. Because the apartment had always been temporary, a safe harbor during the storm. Now the storm had passed. I need to start looking for my own place, Naomi said. You've been amazing letting me stay with you all this time. But I need my own space. I've loved having you here. But I understand. You need to build your own life now. Over the next few days, Naomi began the process of reclaiming her house. The locks had already been changed, but now it truly felt like hers. She hired movers to bring her things back from Yvonne's apartment. Walking through the empty rooms, she saw them differently now. Not as the house she'd shared with Brandon, but as a space full of possibility. She could redecorate, rearrange, make it truly hers. The first thing she did was paint the bedroom. The walls had been beige, neutral, safe. She painted them a deep teal, bright and bold. Then the living room in a soft green. The kitchen got yellow cabinets. Color flooded back into her life, literally and figuratively. Brandon tried to call a few more times, but she didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. The legal battle was over. Their marriage was over. They were strangers now, connected only by paperwork and memories. One evening, about a week after the ruling, Patricia stopped by with a casserole. I know you're probably tired of people bringing you food, she said. But I'm a mother. It's what we do. They sat in the newly painted living room eating and talking. How is he? Naomi asked, surprising herself with the question. Brandon? He's struggling. Lost his place in the company, lost most of his assets, lost you. He's living in a small apartment, working as a consultant. It's humbling for him. Do you think he's learned anything? Patricia was quiet for a moment. I think he's learning. Whether he truly changes, time will tell. But that's not your problem anymore. No, it's not. He asked about you. Wanted to know if you were okay. What did you tell him? I told him you're better than okay. I told him you're thriving. Naomi smiled. I'm getting there. She enrolled in a graduate program at the local university, starting classes in the fall. She accepted Trevor's offer to take a more active role in the company, joining the advisory board. She started painting again, something she'd loved in college but had abandoned during her marriage. Her art studio became the guest bedroom, walls covered with canvases in various stages of completion. Bright colors, bold strokes, emotions transformed into something beautiful. Yvonne visited often, always bringing wine and laughter. They'd sit in the backyard garden talking about everything and nothing. You know what I love? Yvonne said one evening. How you've reclaimed everything. Your house, your career, your hobbies. Your whole life. It feels good. Like I'm finally becoming who I was always meant to be. What about dating? Are you ready for that? Naomi considered the question. Maybe. Eventually. But I'm not rushing into anything. I'm happy on my own right now. That's something I need to appreciate. Smart woman. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, Naomi attended a charity gala for a local arts foundation. She donated some of her paintings for the auction and had been invited to attend. She wore a stunning emerald green gown, her hair styled in elegant curls. She felt beautiful not because she was trying to impress anyone, but because she finally felt comfortable in her own skin. At the gala, she mingled with artists and patrons, discussing techniques and inspirations. One of her paintings sold for $5,000, with the proceeds going to support young artists. Congratulations, a voice said behind her. She turned to find a man in his late 30s, handsome with kind eyes. I'm James. I bought your painting. Thank you. That's very generous. It spoke to me. All that color and emotion. You're very talented. They talked for a while about art and life and dreams. He was a teacher, he told her, working with at-risk youth. He'd always believed in the power of creativity to heal. I understand that, Naomi said. Art saved me in a lot of ways. From what? From forgetting who I was. James nodded, understanding in his eyes. Would you like to get coffee sometime? I'd love to hear more about your work. Naomi hesitated, then smiled. I'd like that. As she drove home that night, she thought about how far she'd come. From the woman who'd nodded silently when her husband said he never loved her, to the woman who'd fought for what she deserved, to the woman who was now open to new possibilities. The journey hadn't been easy. There were still hard days, moments when she felt the loss of what might have been. But those moments were becoming rarer, replaced by days of contentment and hope. She'd learned that revenge wasn't about destroying someone else. It was about building yourself up, refusing to be broken, insisting on your own worth. And that was exactly what she'd done. Brandon sat in his studio apartment, staring at the bare walls. It was nothing like the house he'd shared with Naomi, nothing like the life he'd imagined having with Simone. It was small, cramped, lonely. He'd hit rock bottom, and the worst part was knowing he'd dug the hole himself. The consulting work barely covered his bills. Most of his former clients had dropped him after the divorce became public. The industry was small and everyone knew what he'd done. Cheating on your wife was one thing. Stealing from marital assets to do it was another entirely. His phone rarely rang anymore. His friends had distanced themselves, unwilling to be associated with his scandal. His mother still called, but their conversations were strained. Patricia made it clear she loved him but didn't approve of his choices. Simone was engaged now to the real estate developer she'd left him for. Brandon had seen the announcement on social media. She looked happy, holding up her ring for the camera. He wondered if she'd ever think about him, about what they'd had. Probably not. He thought about Naomi constantly. Not the way he used to, taking her for granted, assuming she'd always be there. Now he thought about all the ways she'd supported him, believed in him, loved him. All the things he'd thrown away. He tried to reach out a few times but she never responded. Her number was blocked, her social media accounts private. She'd moved on completely as if he'd never existed. Gerald had sent the final accounting of the divorce settlement. Brandon had walked away with about $200,000, enough to start over if he was smart about it. But it was a fraction of what he would have had if he'd just been faithful, if he'd just appreciated what he had. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, "You got what you deserved." He didn't respond. The messages came occasionally from people he'd wronged or people who just wanted to kick him while he was down. He usually ignored them. But this one stung because it was true. He'd gotten exactly what he deserved. Brandon thought about the night he'd told Naomi he was leaving. The way she just nodded, so calm and composed. He'd thought she was weak, that she didn't care enough to fight for him. Now he understood. She'd been preparing. While he was lying and skeeting and planning his escape, she was building a case, documenting everything, getting ready for the moment she knew would come. She'd been 10 steps ahead of him the entire time. He admired that in a twisted way. The strength it must have taken to stay quiet, to not react, to plan instead of exploding. Naomi had always been stronger than he'd given her credit for. One evening he found himself driving past their old house. He didn't plan to stop, just wanted to see it one more time. But as he drove by he saw her. Naomi was in the front yard planting flowers. She wore jean shorts and a bright red t-shirt, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She was smiling, talking to someone he couldn't see. A man emerged from the house, carrying a watering can. He said something that made Naomi laugh, a real laugh, the kind Brandon hadn't heard from her in years. The man was tall, well-built, with an easy smile. He handed her the watering can and their fingers touched. It was a small moment but intimate. Brandon felt something crack inside his chest. She'd moved on. Really moved on. She was happy, maybe happier than she'd ever been with him. He drove away quickly, not wanting to be seen, not wanting to intrude on her new life. Back in his apartment, he opened his laptop and looked at photos from their wedding. Naomi in her white dress, radiant with joy. Him in his tuxedo, thinking about Simone even then, wondering if he was making a mistake. He'd ruined everything. Not just the marriage but his career, his reputation, his relationships with his family. All because he couldn't let go of someone who'd never really loved him. Simone had used him. He saw that now. She'd stayed with him as long as the money flowed, as long as he could provide the lifestyle she wanted. The moment that ended, so did she. And Naomi, who'd loved him unconditionally, who'd given up her own dreams to support his, he'd thrown her away like she meant nothing. Brandon looked at the divorce papers, the final decree that had arrived yesterday. The marriage was dissolved. Naomi Fletcher had legally reclaimed her maiden name. She was Naomi Green again, erasing him from her identity. He didn't blame her. His phone rang. "Trevor. Brandon. We need to talk." "What's left to talk about?" "Your buyout agreement. There's a clause about non-compete. You remember that?" "Vaguely." You can't start a competing business or work for a competitor for 3 years. That's part of the agreement you signed. I know. So this consulting work you're doing, some of it is for companies that compete with us. That violates the agreement. Brandon felt panic rise in his throat. Trevor, that's the only work I can get. I need to survive. Then you need to find non-competing clients. Because if you continue, we'll have to take legal action. And given everything that's happened, I don't think you want more legal trouble. The call ended. Brandon put his head in his hands. Even his attempts to rebuild were blocked by the consequences of his choices. He was trapped in a prison of his own making. Days blurred together. Wake up, send out resumes, get rejected, eat cheap food, go to bed. Repeat. His savings were dwindling. He'd have to move to an even cheaper place soon, maybe get a roommate. At 42 years old, he was starting over with less than he'd had at 25. One night, unable to sleep, he wrote an email to Naomi. He knew she wouldn't read it, but he had to try. Naomi, I know you won't respond to this. I know I have no right to contact you. But I need to say something. I'm sorry. I'm so deeply, truly sorry for everything I did to you. You deserved so much better than what I gave you. You deserved honesty, loyalty, love. And I failed you in every way. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect anything. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand what I lost. And I would give anything to go back and do things differently. But I can't. So I hope you're happy. I hope you find everything you deserve. I hope you forget about me and build a beautiful life. You earned it, Brandon. He hovered over the send button for a long time, then deleted the email. What good would it do? It would just be another burden for her to carry, another reminder of pain she'd moved past. She was free of him. He should let her stay that way. Brandon lay in his narrow bed, staring at the ceiling. He'd thought leaving Naomi for Simone was choosing love over obligation, passion over complacency. But it wasn't love. It was obsession, ego, fear of missing out on something he thought he deserved. And what had it gotten him? Nothing. Less than nothing. He'd had a woman who loved him, supported him, believed in him. A beautiful home. A successful business. Respect in his community. A family who admired him. And he'd destroyed it all because he couldn't let go of a fantasy. The next morning, Brandon woke up to a message from his mother. Your aunt died. Funeral is Saturday. I hope you'll come. He hadn't seen most of his family since the divorce. He wasn't sure he could face them, face their disappointment and judgment. But Aunt Rose had always been kind to him. He owed her the respect of saying goodbye. At the funeral, his family was cordial but distant. Nicole hugged him briefly. His uncle shook his hand with a firm grip that communicated more disapproval than words could. His mother sat beside him during the service. How are you doing? She whispered. I'm surviving. That's not what I asked. Brandon looked at her. I'm miserable, Mom. I'm alone, broke, ashamed. I wake up every day and wish I could go back and change everything. Patricia squeezed his hand. I'm glad you're finally feeling that. Not because I want you to suffer, but because it means you're learning. Real change comes from hitting bottom. I think I've hit it. Good. Now you can start climbing back up. But do it for yourself, not for anyone else. Not to win Naomi back because that ship has sailed. Not to prove something to me or Nicole. Do it because you want to be a better man. After the funeral, Brandon drove around the city, remembering his life before everything fell apart. The restaurants where he'd taken clients. The gym where he'd worked out. The parks where he and Naomi had walked on Sunday mornings. He'd taken it all for granted. The life, the love, the possibilities. Now they were gone and he had no one to blame but himself. That night he made a decision. He'd stop trying to contact Naomi. He'd stop looking at her social media through other people's accounts. He'd stop driving by the house. He'd let her go, really let her go, because that's what she deserved. Freedom from him and everything he represented. And maybe, just maybe, if he focused on becoming a better person, on learning from his mistakes instead of wallowing in them, he could eventually forgive himself. It wouldn't be easy. It would take years, maybe the rest of his life. But it was the only path forward. Brandon looked around his small apartment, at the life he'd reduced himself to. This was his rock bottom. His breaking point. And from here the only way to go was up. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Naomi stood in her newly renovated kitchen, sunlight streaming through the windows she'd had enlarged. The house looked nothing like it had during her marriage. Every room had been transformed with bright colors, new furniture, personal touches that reflected who she was, not who she tried to be. Her favorite change was the sunroom she'd added, a glass-enclosed space filled with plants and her easels. She painted there every morning before starting her day, losing herself in colors and creativity. Graduate school was challenging but invigorating. Her classes in business management and entrepreneurship pushed her to think differently, to see possibilities where she'd only seen limitations before. Her professors praised her insights, particularly her understanding of workplace dynamics and organizational culture. She'd learned more than she'd expected, not just about business but about herself. She was smart, capable, strategic. All the things she'd suppressed during her marriage, trying to make Brandon feel superior, trying not to threaten his ego. Trevor had made good on his offer. Naomi now sat on the advisory board for Fletcher Technologies, which had been renamed Meridian Tech after Brandon's departure. Her investment had grown substantially, and she provided valuable input on company decisions. "You have good instincts," Trevor told her during one board meeting. "You see things the rest of us miss." "I learned to pay attention to details," she said. "To notice what people don't say as much as what they do." The skills she developed while documenting Brandon's affair had unexpected applications in business. She could read financial statements and spot irregularities. She could analyze patterns and predict outcomes. She could prepare thoroughly and present confidently. Her friendship with Yvonne had deepened through everything they'd been through together. They had dinner every week, sometimes at restaurants, sometimes at Naomi's house, often just take out on the couch while watching movies. "Remember when you first found out about Brandon?" Yvonne said one evening. "You called me crying, barely able to speak." "I remember. I thought my life was over. Look at you now. Thriving." That's the word Patricia used, and she was right. Naomi smiled. She did feel like she was thriving, not just surviving. Every day brought new opportunities, new challenges, new reasons to be grateful. Her relationship with James had developed slowly, carefully. They'd started with coffee, then dinner, then walks through the city's art district. He was patient, never pushing, always respectful of the fact that she was healing. "I'm not ready for anything serious," she told him early on. "I need time. I understand. We can just be friends. See where it goes." And they were friends, good friends. He made her laugh. He listened when she talked about her dreams. He shared his own struggles and triumphs, teaching troubled kids who reminded him of himself at that age. One evening they attended an art gallery opening together. James had insisted on going, saying her work deserved to be seen by more people. 2 of her paintings were displayed, and the response was overwhelmingly positive. "You should have your own show," James said as they left. "These people love your work." "Maybe someday. Right now, I'm just enjoying painting for the sake of painting. That's the best reason to do anything." They walked through the city talking about everything and nothing. When they reached her car, James hesitated. "Naomi, I need to tell you something." Her heart skipped. "What is it?" "I know you said you're not ready for anything serious. And I respect that. But I need you to know. I have feelings for you. Real feelings. And I'm willing to wait as long as it takes, but I didn't want to hide how I feel." Naomi looked at him, this kind, patient man who'd never asked for more than she could give. "James? You don't have to say anything. I just wanted to be honest." "No, I'm glad you told me." She took a breath. "I have feelings for you too. I'm just scared. My judgment was so wrong before. I trusted someone completely and he destroyed that trust. I don't know if I can do that again. I'm not Brandon. I would never do what he did." "I know. Logically, I know that. But the fear is still there." James took her hand gently. "Then we take it slow. As slow as you need. I'm not going anywhere." Over the following weeks, their relationship shifted. They were still careful, still taking things one step at a time. But there was an openness now, a vulnerability that felt both terrifying and right. Patricia and Nicole had remained close to Naomi, treating her like family despite the divorce. They had lunch together once a month, talking about everything except Brandon. "Have you heard from him?" Patricia finally asked one day, breaking their unspoken rule. "No. And I don't want to. That chapter of my life is closed. He's struggling. Living in a small apartment, barely making ends meet. Part of me feels sorry for him." "Part of me does too," Naomi admitted. "I don't want him to suffer. I just want to live my life without him in it." "That's fair. More than fair." Patricia squeezed her hand. "You know, I always hoped you'd be my daughter-in-law forever. And even though the legal relationship ended, you're still family to me. You always will be." Naomi felt tears prick her eyes. "Thank you. That means everything to me." She'd also started a small consulting business, helping women navigate divorce proceedings. She didn't advertise, but word spread through lawyer networks and support groups. Women came to her for advice on documentation, on protecting assets, on staying strong when everything felt impossible. "You saved my life," one client told her after successfully negotiating her divorce settlement. "I was ready to just give up and accept whatever he offered. But you showed me I had power. I had rights." "You always had those things," Naomi said. "I just helped you see them." The work was emotionally challenging, bringing up memories of her own divorce. But it was also healing, transforming her pain into something that could help others. One afternoon, while painting in her sunroom, Naomi realized she couldn't remember the last time she'd thought about Brandon. Days had passed, maybe even a week, without him crossing her mind. That felt like victory. She finished the painting she was working on, a vibrant abstract piece in reds and oranges and yellows. It was called Phoenix, representing rebirth and transformation. Looking at it, she saw her journey reflected in the colors and shapes. The dark corners representing her marriage. The bright explosion representing the divorce. The warm, glowing center representing where she was now. She'd risen from the ashes of her old life and built something new, something better, something entirely her own. That evening, James picked her up for dinner. They were going to a new restaurant downtown, then to a concert in the park. "You look beautiful," he said when she answered the door in her maroon dress. "Thank you. You look pretty good yourself." They drove downtown talking about their week. James had helped one of his students get accepted to an art school with a full scholarship. Naomi had aced an exam in her strategy course. "Life's good," James said, glancing at her with a smile. "Yeah," Naomi agreed. "It really is." At dinner they ran into Simone. She was there with her fiancé, the real estate developer. She looked uncomfortable when she saw Naomi. "Naomi." "Hi." "Hello, Simone." An awkward pause. Then Simone's fiancé pulled her away and they were gone. "That was your ex-husband's?" James trailed off. "Yes." "His affair partner. How do you feel?" Naomi thought about it. "Nothing. I don't feel anything. She's just a stranger now, part of a life that doesn't exist anymore. That's healthy. It took a while to get here. But I'm glad I am." After dinner, they walked to the park where the concert was being held. The summer evening was perfect, warm with a gentle breeze. They found a spot on the grass and listened to the band, a local group playing jazz standards. "Naomi," James said during a quiet moment between songs. "I know we're taking things slow. And I respect that. But I want you to know. I'm all in. Whenever you're ready, however that looks, I'm here." Naomi looked at him, this man who'd been so patient, so kind, so different from Brandon in every way that mattered. "I think I might be ready," she said softly. "I think I might be ready to try again." He smiled and they kissed, gentle and sweet and full of possibility. As the concert continued, Naomi leaned against James and looked up at the stars. She thought about the woman she'd been a year ago, the one who'd nodded silently when her husband destroyed her world. That woman was gone. In her place was someone stronger, wiser, more complete. Someone who knew her worth and wouldn't settle for less. Someone who'd fought for what she deserved and won. The divorce hadn't broken her. It had freed her. And now, finally, she was ready to embrace everything that freedom could bring. 2 years after the divorce, Naomi stood backstage at the Grand Hotel ballroom, smoothing down her blue silk gown. Her hair was styled in loose waves, and she wore the diamond earrings her grandmother had left her. She looked polished, confident, powerful. Tonight was the annual charity gala for the Arts Foundation, an organization she joined 6 months ago. They'd asked her to give the keynote speech, a request that had both honored and terrified her. Yvonne appeared at her side, looking stunning in a red dress. "You ready?" "I think so. I've practiced the speech 100 times. You're going to be amazing. You always are." Through the curtain, Naomi could see the ballroom filling with guests. Business leaders, artists, philanthropists, community members. All there to support the arts and hear about the foundation's work. James was out there somewhere along with Patricia and Nicole. Trevor and Anna. Her professors from graduate school. The women she'd helped through their divorces. All the people who'd supported her journey. The foundation director, a woman named Sharon, came backstage. 5 minutes, Naomi. The introduction is starting. Naomi took a deep breath. She'd come so far from the woman who'd been afraid to speak up, afraid to take up space, afraid to shine. Out in the ballroom, Sharon took the stage. "Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our annual gala. Tonight, we're honored to have a very special speaker. Naomi Green is many things. An artist, an entrepreneur, an advocate for women's rights, and a generous supporter of the arts. But more than that, she's a testament to resilience and transformation. Please welcome Naomi Green. The audience applauded as Naomi walked onto the stage. The lights were bright, but she could see faces in the crowd. Smiling faces, supportive faces. And in the back, barely visible, was Brandon. She'd known he might come. The gala was open to the public and he still had connections in the community. For a moment their eyes met. He looked older, worn down by life. But also, softer somehow. Less arrogant. Naomi looked away and began her speech. Good evening. 2 years ago, I stood in a courtroom fighting for my dignity, my rights, my future. I was ending a marriage that had defined me for a decade and I was terrified. Not just of the legal battle but of who I would be without that identity. Without being someone's wife. Without that role I'd played for so long. The room was silent, everyone listening. I'd spent 10 years making myself smaller, quieter, less ambitious. I'd convinced myself that supporting someone else's dreams was the same as having my own. That love meant sacrifice, even when that sacrifice wasn't reciprocated. Even when that sacrifice was destroying me. Naomi looked around the room, making eye contact with different people. But here's what I learned. Love isn't about making yourself smaller. It's about finding someone who celebrates your bigness. Who wants you to be fully yourself, in all your bright, bold, complicated glory. And if you don't have that, if you have to dim your light to make someone else comfortable, that's not love. That's a cage. She paused, letting the words sink in. The divorce was the best thing that ever happened to me. Not because I wanted my marriage to fail. I didn't. I fought hard to make it work. But sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is let go of what's destroying you, even if you love it. Even if letting go means starting over with nothing. Except I didn't start with nothing. I started with myself. With my strength, my intelligence, my creativity, my resilience. With the support of people who truly loved me. And that was enough. More than enough. Naomi smiled, feeling the truth of her words. Today I'm here not just as a survivor of a difficult divorce, but as someone who's thriving. I finished my master's degree. I sit on the board of a successful tech company. I've built a consulting business helping other women navigate similar journeys. I paint, I create, I live fully. I wake up every day grateful for the life I have, the life I've built. The Arts Foundation asked me to speak tonight about second chances and new beginnings. And I believe in both of those things. But I want to add something else. Believe in yourself. Believe that you're worth fighting for. Believe that your dreams matter, your voice matters, your life matters. Don't wait for permission to be yourself. Don't wait for someone else to validate your worth. Don't settle for less than you deserve because you're afraid of being alone. Being alone isn't the worst thing that can happen. Losing yourself is. The audience was completely still, hanging on every word. I also want to talk about forgiveness. Not the kind where you forget what happened or let people back into your life who hurt you. But the kind where you release the anger that's poisoning you. Where you choose peace over bitterness, growth over revenge. Someone once told me that the best revenge is living well. They were right. Every day I wake up happy and fulfilled is a day I prove that what was done to me didn't break me. That's more powerful than any punishment I could have inflicted. So tonight, I'm here to celebrate second chances. Not just mine but all of ours. Every person in this room has faced challenges, made mistakes, survived losses. Every person here has had to choose between bitterness and hope, between staying stuck and moving forward. The arts are important because they give us a way to process those experiences. To transform pain into beauty, confusion into clarity, darkness into light. Art saved me when I needed saving. It gave me a way to express emotions I couldn't speak. It reminded me that I had value beyond my relationships or my roles. That's why I support this foundation. Because art changes lives. It changed mine. And I want to help ensure that everyone, regardless of their circumstances, has access to that transformative power. Naomi took a breath, coming to the end of her speech. 2 years ago, I thought my life was over. Today, I know it was just beginning. I hope that if you're facing something difficult right now, if you're in the middle of your own storm, you can hold on to that hope. You will get through this. You will be okay. You will be more than okay. You will rise. You will thrive. You will reclaim your power and your joy. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting the arts and all the lives they touch. The audience erupted in applause, a standing ovation that went on for several minutes. Naomi stood there, taking it in, feeling the love and support wash over her. As she left the stage, Sharon hugged her. That was incredible. People are crying out there. Good tears, I hope. The best kind. James found her in the hallway, pulling her into a tight embrace. I'm so proud of you. Thank you for being here. Always. Patricia and Nicole were next, both wiping tears from their eyes. You were magnificent, Patricia said. Absolutely magnificent. I meant every word. I know you did. That's what made it so powerful. The rest of the evening was a blur of conversations and congratulations. People kept approaching Naomi, sharing their own stories, thanking her for her honesty and courage. Later, as she and James danced to a slow song, she saw Brandon leaving. He looked back one more time and she could see something in his face. Not longing or regret, but acknowledgement. Recognition that she'd moved on completely, that she'd built a life he had no place in. She felt neither satisfaction nor sadness. Just nothing. He was part of her past, but he had no power over her present or her future. What are you thinking about? James asked. How lucky I am. How good life is. It is good, isn't it? It really is. They swayed to the music, surrounded by people who cared about them, in a life Naomi had built from nothing. A year later, Naomi published a book. Rising, a guide to navigating divorce and reclaiming your power. It became a bestseller, helping thousands of women go through what she'd experienced. She opened an art gallery in the city, showcasing her work alongside other emerging artists. The opening night was packed, with pieces selling faster than she'd anticipated. She and James moved in together into a new house they'd chosen together. It had big windows and bright rooms and a studio space for her painting. It felt like home from the first day. Graduate school led to a position as a professor, teaching business strategy to undergraduates. She loved working with young minds, helping them see possibilities they hadn't considered. Her consulting business expanded, and she hired 2 associates to help with the caseload. Women traveled from across the state to work with her, knowing she understood what they were going through. She reconnected with old friends from college, the ones she'd lost touch with during her marriage. They were amazed by her transformation, by how she'd taken tragedy and turned it into triumph. 5 years after the divorce, Naomi stood in her gallery at a showing of her latest collection. The pieces were called Metamorphosis, charting her journey from darkness to light. James stood beside her, her partner in every sense of the word. Patricia and Nicole were there, along with Yvonne and Trevor and so many others who'd supported her. A young woman approached hesitantly. Miss Green? I read your book. It saved my life. I was in a relationship like yours and I didn't know how to leave. Your book showed me the way. I'm glad I could help, Naomi said, taking the woman's hand. You saved yourself. You did the hard work. I just provided some guidance. What you did, fighting back, documenting everything, getting justice, that was so brave. It wasn't brave. It was necessary. I was protecting myself. That's what bravery is. As the evening wound down, Naomi and James walked through the gallery, looking at her paintings. Each one told a story, captured a moment, represented a feeling from her journey. You know what I love about your art? James said. It's so full of life. Of color and energy and hope. That's how I feel now. Finally. You've come so far. We've come so far, she corrected. You've been part of this journey too. He smiled and kissed her forehead. I'm just lucky to be along for the ride. That night, as Naomi lay in bed, she thought about the woman she'd been when this all started. The one who'd nodded when her husband said he never loved her. The one who'd been afraid and hurt and lost. That woman had found her strength. Had fought for herself. Had built a life more beautiful than anything she'd imagined. And now, surrounded by love and success and genuine happiness, Naomi understood something profound. Revenge wasn't about destroying the person who hurt you. It was about refusing to let them destroy you. It was about building something so beautiful from the wreckage that their actions became irrelevant. Brandon had tried to break her. Instead, he'd freed her. And that freedom had led to a life beyond her wildest dreams. She'd won. Not just the legal battle, but the battle for her own soul, her own future, her own happiness. And that was the greatest victory of all.